Independence Blue Cross, a weekly recap of your Philadelphia Flyers from blue line to blue line. Broadcasting live from Chickies and Pete's, tonight's show is brought to you by Han & Stone Spa, Pat Dion Beverages, The Capitol Grill, Chickies and Pete's, Payroll Service Solutions, and Independence Blue Cross. We now go live to Chickies and Pete's for On the Ice, presented by Independence Blue Cross. Now, here are your hosts, former Flyer Brad Marsh and Paul Jolovitz.
And welcome everybody to the beautiful Chickies and Pete's in Marlton. A little bit of a different schedule tonight. We're on 7 to 8, which is obvious because it's 7 now. I'm Paul Jolovitz with Brad Marsh. We'll introduce our guest in a second. How are you doing, buddy?
Doing great. How are you doing, bud?
Good. You told me the Flyers will get points in 6 consecutive games a couple weeks ago. Looks like you are a savant right now, huh?
Yeah, well, it's certainly exciting to see as an old guy, an old Flyer, and now a hockey fan. It's great to see him back in the mix because, as we've said many times, you know, you can't beat playoff hockey, and it's the atmosphere is tremendous. So, as a former player, I'm really cheering for him to get in the playoffs. If you're building the team, I don't know if that's your wish, but you know what I'm saying. You're involved in all those meetings, but it sure is exciting to go down to the building now.
It sure is. You're in the race, and we'll see what they do with the trade deadline. A couple new players up. The goaltending looks firmed up. John Tortorella has a couple lines that he's used for more than 3 shifts, which is tremendous. So things look like they're going right, and they're going right for us because we have a great guest. We had him back in the day, a long time ago. Played 17 years in the NHL. From Canada, the Flyers Director of Player Development, or Assistant Director of Player Development, Nick Schultz. How you doing, Nick?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for being here. Tell everybody what you do. When people hear these titles, to me, it's all about what power you have or what you have to put in the organization, not what your business card says. What do you do?
Yeah, I think the role was really created after the salary cap came into place, just with having to be able to draft and develop your players. So it's a lot of ex-players. It's kind of like a mentorship role. So we deal with all the guys, all the draft picks, anyone that's been picked and's playing in Canadian junior, playing in college hockey. We work with these guys, help these guys develop and make sure that they can turn pro. And a big focus of ours is with the Phantoms in Lehigh Valley. Those guys are obviously the closest to making the jump to the NHL.
Well, there's a kid that made the jump to the NHL last night who's 29, Abels, who was drafted, I believe, in 2016 in the 3rd round. I don't think he was a Flyer draft pick. I think he was a Ranger draft pick. I could be wrong.
Yeah, he was signed as a depth guy down there. We needed some guys down the middle. I think you see with the Flyers too. Obviously, the center position is something the team's looking at building upon. So I think he was signed to come and be a guy that could play in the minors as an older guy, a big body that could help some of our young wingers out down there. And you can see he stepped in, and I think with the experience he's gotten at his age, he was able to jump in and be effective and help the Flyers last night.
Just one of the things, Brad, that the Flyers have gotten in the last couple of weeks. You've selected Flyers Improvement for 200, and the answer is this has helped the Flyers more than anything else turn from whatever it was to this 6-game point streak right now.
Well, before we get on to that, I just want to go back to the young fellow, or the old fellow that made his debut last
29.
night. Like, what a great story, and Latvian and Mexican descent. I mean, it's just a wonderful story of someone that has stuck to, I guess, his dream. And he's worked hard. I don't know him, but I will assume that he's a hard worker in practice and in the summertime. And he earned that game. It just wasn't given to him last night. And so I didn't hear that he'd come up, and I happened to be in the press box, and I saw this kid. I assumed it was a kid come out and do the rookie skate. All the players hold back. And then Billy Clement, one of our alumni, was in town last night for an alumni event, so he went up to see all the old broadcasters because that's what he did for a million years, including hosting this show.
Yep.
And we happened to be, he was in talking to Jonesy, and so I was in there, and I said, Danny, who was the kid that did the rookie lap? And so he was telling me all about him, and man, oh man, he's got to be a favorite now to cheer for and get that first NHL goal under his belt, and it's a great story.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was good to see, and just to your point, he was brought in to help the organization and have some depth at that position. He's done a great job in the American League, providing some offense there and playing well for the Phantoms and helping our young guys out. And to see him get rewarded and get a game with the Flyers and obviously with some guys out right now, it's nice to have that depth and have someone like him be able to step in and, like you said, fulfill his dream. And like you said, his wife and kid were there, which was kind of nice.
Awesome.
So pretty unique for a rookie lap to have someone like that in the building. And now he gets a chance to go into MSG and play another, probably pretty special game for him. So it's the story kind of keeps evolving, but hopefully he can keep playing some good minutes for the Flyers.
It never stops. Of course, the Red Wings were
What was
hot.
your question?
What actress started? What's the biggest reason the Flyers are turning it around?
Well, we've talked a lot about the goaltending this year,
Yep.
and I don't think that comes as any surprise to Nick. But the thing is, as we said, if you don't get the stop, it really does put you behind the 8 ball. And not only are we getting lots of stops, we're getting stops at the right time of the game. And even was the last minute, the last 10, 15 seconds,
Yep.
Urson came up with
sure.
the big stop again, and you can't think of a better time to make the big stop at that, So the goaltending, I think, has been the big reason of, 5 of 6, 6 of 7, or whatever it is. So kudos to them, one, for sticking to the basics and being able to come out and stop the puck.
Yeah, I think Torts has alluded to it a little bit. We were in a good spot last year with Carter Hart and Sam kind of filling that role as a backup, and they really had a good tandem going, and they lost Carter. It kind of sped up things for Sam, and then same thing coming in this year at the end of last year with Fedotov coming over and kind of get thrown in the fire, and same thing this year with Kolosov too. So it's kind of sped up the process a little bit and put these guys in a tough spot. So you can see Sam kind of settling in after a little bit of some injuries this year, but he's proven that he can play, and he's healthy now, which is good. And Feds has played some good games and settled in a little bit, getting used to the North American game. And I think it's good now. They got Coley going down the minors and hopefully getting some games there and getting some more pro experience under his belt.
He's going to take that minor assignment because we always heard that Kolosov might say no and go to the KHL. Give us an update on that if you can.
Yeah, I just saw there's a release that came out that he's going down. That's management deals with that stuff. But yeah, it's nice to see that he obviously, whatever the situation was, he's going to go down and play some games. There's some injuries down in Lehigh Valley as well. So I think for any young player, regardless of the position, I think goaltending's probably the hardest, and then it works its way out from there with the defenseman. It seems like those guys need the most time, and it's important for those guys to get those minutes in Lehigh Valley before they're thrown into the fire up with the Flyers.
And the path for him back to the NHL, back to the Flyers in the NHL, is Lehigh. It's not going back to the KHL. The shots are different. The ice surface is different. The angles are different. If he wants to be back, he has to be, 2 hours north of here, an hour 45 north of here. It's about 10 degrees colder in Lehigh right now.
Yeah, and I think to that point that's the reason he got a shot right now. If he didn't come over this year and he stayed over in Europe, obviously he wouldn't have got an opportunity to go up. And I think he had some quality starts for the Flyers. He played well and shows, the athleticism he has, the goaltender that he can be. But it's a tough position, and you need to play and get that seasoning in the minors. And like I said, some of this process has been sped up, but it's important for him to play games to work on his game.
And there's a trivia question. I don't believe there'd be 2 other NHL teams with 2 Latvians on their roster.
Yeah.
How about one? They're not in the 4 nations. There's another trivia question. It was on the NHL Network last night. I'll see if Nick can get it first. This former NHL defenseman is second all-time in games played for the Minnesota Wild. Who might that be?
Well, I know because it was Spurgeon that passed me, I think. So I was around. I believe it was either the game in Philly or just before they came to Philadelphia a few seasons ago. So, Minnesota's a great spot for myself to start out and play, and it's kind of nice to see Jared Spurgeon, the career he's had there.
No, you're second.
I'm second, yeah. Spurgeon
Oh, he's
Spurgeon
first,
passed.
okay.
He's first, I believe. So it's, but yeah, it's kind of where it all started out, and so it's kind of nice to see him still playing and being effective.
All right, may as well get this out of the way, too, because I ask all our guests this. You played 17 years in the NHL, obviously a defensive defenseman like Mr. Marsh. How many goals might Nick Schultz have scored in the NHL?
I keep telling everyone I was a 30-goal scorer. It might have taken me 15 years to get, but I still scored 30.
You got it. A lot of guys don't know,
Took
Brad.
me a while.
Most guys miss that, right?
A lot of times when I speak and fans, they don't, of course with Google now on the phones, they can figure it out. A lot of times when I speak, I'll say I'm a former 50-goal scorer. And if they clap, I know they know nothing about hockey.
For sure.
If they laugh, then I realize that they are hockey fans because they know I don't have a hope in hell of being a 50-goal scorer, regardless of how long I played.
I didn't score 50 in my career. I told Nick I'd lead the NHL in least penalty minutes ever, tied with about 8 billion other people. But I asked you guys a question. I heard Leon Draisaitl last night, who I think is a great player, obviously a terrific player, talking about Connor McDavid's suspension, Brad and Nick. And McDavid clearly, with a cross-check, he doesn't deny it. But he got 3 games. It was a second offense this year, blah, 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 whatever. But Draisaitl said hockey fans deserve to see great players, and great players shouldn't get 3-game suspensions for that. I totally disagree. I mean, that great players can't do anything that anybody else can't do. There's no poetic license to kill somebody because you happen to be a top player in the league. How do you feel about that, Nick?
It definitely warranted a suspension. I think a few people have brought up, I believe they play each other tomorrow night again, Edmonton and Vancouver, so they talked about maybe being a 1-game suspension. I think you want to build hockey, and with NFL playoffs going on, with everything going on right now, you want to draw some more attention to our sport. I think it'd been great to see those guys face off against each other again, but definitely it's a penalty. Obviously, those guys, they're targeted a little bit, and you could see Garland was all over him, but you for sure can't cross-check the guy in the face. You want to drop your gloves. Obviously, probably Marsh, you would know. Back in the day too, it was police a little bit different, where guys you'd be more fighting than using their sticks and cross-check it in the face. They would be dropping their gloves. So, but I think those stars, they got to stand up for themselves. They got to protect themselves a little bit. And obviously, he was getting a little bit frustrated. But you know those guys can't get away with that stuff and not get suspended.
Interesting, because 10 years ago, he did defend himself. He was, obviously, people go after Gretzky, McDavid. Matvey might be that in the future. And he did defend himself, and he broke his knuckle in a fight, almost missed the World Juniors. Yeah. What do you think about this from Brad?
Well, you don't want your superstars fighting like McDavid, because if you lose them, you're in big trouble. But
yep.
It's funny, I mentioned Bill Clement in for an alumni event, and we were talking, and that question came up last night. And back in the day, no one went after Gretzky because you had to go through a couple big guys,
Semenko and
McSorley, and they made no secret about it. Nobody touches Wayne Gretzky, or you go through me. And I think that's the one unfortunate thing about the modern game, if you will, is there's not a lot of protection out there for the superstars. And let's face it, no one really came, no disrespect, but no one really came to see us play. They came to see the McDavids of the world. In my era, it was the Gretzkys of the world, and so on and so on. And they have to make some adjustments so they can get some protection for the star players out there.
Either you guys ever get suspended in your careers?
No.
I did not. I didn't. I think part of that too is the instigator rule. Obviously, everyone talks about that, so that's changed that too. Where those guys, Garland knows no one can kind of come and grab him, right? And at that point in the game, taking a penalty, or an instigator penalty, that's kind of changed that. So that would help police it a little bit for the players as well if there wasn't the instigator call.
All right, we're going to get back to the Flyers. Obviously, going to talk about most of them this show, but next month, no All-Star game this year. The Four Nations tournament coming up. I'm from America. Nobody cares. We have 2 Canadian former NHL players here. How much you guys looking forward to this? You got Flyers have some guys. Most teams have somebody. What's your thoughts? I'm looking forward to it a lot, Brad. Are you?
I think it's going to be tremendous. I think it was a concept that started way back in 1972, and I think hockey fans and a lot of sports fans look forward to
Henderson.
it. Yeah, a lot of sports fans look forward to it, and they got away from it, collective bargaining and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's great to have back on the table the Four Nations Cup, and we're going to see the best on best playing in the North American rinks as opposed to the big ice surfaces over in Europe. I think it's going to be great hockey, and I think this is a good opportunity for the NHL to win some fans over, because there'll be new eyeballs watching this Four Nations Cup. So,
and then, Nick, it'll be after the Super Bowl. Kind of the end of February is kind of the sports dead period. Got the dog days of the NBA, football, obviously baseball, spring training hasn't started. How's the NHL capitalize on this to the utmost?
Yeah, I think it's, like Brad mentioned, I think it's smart leading into the Olympics next year and having best-on-best competition and the NHL players back in the Olympics next year. They wanted to your point, capitalize on that and have some best-on-best. And you talk about guys like Crosby and McDavid that have never played together, McKinnon, and you look on the U.S. side with the Chuck brothers and their lineup that they have down there.
In the
and
US
the goaltending, too, is strong. And I think all the countries have, really solid solid groups, and I think Canada plays U.S. on a Saturday night in Montreal. So there's going to be some big-time games there and eyeballs on them. Those guys are going to be fired up to play, and it's going to be really good for the sport. I think the only thing it's lacking, which hopefully at one point we'll get back to having Russia involved in the mix, because I think you look at the talent that they have and the different element that brings having those guys involved in the mix. So
don't think that has.
We got to get rid of one guy first.
Yeah, we do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not much to do with hockey
But
either.
I actually have a question with the Four Nations.
Can you wait till after the break?
I might forget it. No, go ahead. Break time.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
We'll test the memory of Mr. Marsh. We're going to take a quick break. Come back to Chickies and Pete's in Marlton. Nick Schultz, a great guest on the ice, presented by Independence Blue Cross, right here on 107.3 and 1490 AM. And we'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
Hi, it's Pete from Chickie and Pete's, and we are prouder than ever to partner with the Philadelphia Eagles. Chickie and Pete's has been named the official sports bar of the Philadelphia Eagles, and we continue to serve as the official caterer of both Eagles training camp and the official caterer of the First Trust Bank Club at Lincoln Financial Field. Go where the players go. The official sports bar of the Philadelphia Eagles, Chickies and Pete's.
Payroll Service Solutions was established in 2001 to cater to the payroll needs of small to medium-sized businesses. Payroll Service Solutions offers unparalleled customer service while they deliver a complete and accurate payroll. When calling Payroll Service Solutions, you will never be put into a voicemail or go through a series of prompts to get to a person. All customer service representatives are extensively trained to handle all of your payroll needs, therefore saving you time. They value each and every one of their clients. No account is too small. Call Payroll Service Solutions today at 1-866-PAY-EASY for a no-obligation review of your payroll needs. That number again is 1-866-PAYEASY. Payroll Service Solutions.
WBCB is now on your FM dial at 107.3, serving Bucks, Burlington, and Mercer counties since 1957. You can now listen to all your WBCB favorites crystal clear on 107.3 FM, a new age for WBCB on a new frequency, 107.3.
At Independence Blue Cross, we take care of the people who take care of you. Everyday heroes like firefighters, police officers, teachers, farmers, and healthcare workers. Doctors and hospitals across the region have IBX, and they know what it means to have reliable access to care. So whether you're saving lives or just trying to live a healthier life, count on IBX, the region's #1 health insurer for 85 years. Learn more at IBX.com.
We now return to Chickies and Pete's for On the Ice, presented by Independence Blue Cross. Once again, here are your hosts, Paul Jolovitz and former Flyer Brad Marsh.
All righty, back with On the Ice, presented by Independence Blue Cross, live here from Chickies and Pete's in Marlton. And it's time now for the Player of the Week, Flyers Player of the Week. And this week it's Sam Erson, the Independence Blue Cross Player of the Week. Sam, 3 wins this week. Allowed 5 goals total. Remember to choose Independence Blue Cross today and begin to live fearless. Mr. Marsh is fearless of his memory. The world is waiting to see, hath he remembered his question?
No, we were just talking about the Four Nations Cup, and it's a good opportunity for the NHL. Who's covering the Four Nations Cup in the States? Is it the regular, the TNT panel with, Paul Bissonnette and crew and Bush? Or is it one of these Apple Pays-ers that I don't understand that you have to?
I'm not
have
sure
to have
who
the
has
extra
rights.
app.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You have
hopefully they have it on.
Oh,
I mean,
my
hopefully
goodness.
it's for everyone to see, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think where we are, obviously, hockey from a television side is never going to be, you know what I mean? It's a much better sport to watch in person and on TV. Obviously, football, it's obviously way better on, like a lot of times on TV to see the replays and stuff, hockey with it moving like that. So, yeah, hopefully, to your point, it's out there for everyone. When they turn on their TV, they can find it. They don't have to pay for the extra app or something
old
to
people
get it,
don't
for sure.
understand.
Exactly.
All right, Brad, you always talk about the World Juniors and how much Canada watches. Obviously, the Super Bowl here, we wish the Eagles good luck on Sunday. Give us an idea in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, U.S. plays Canada on a Saturday night, you said, Nick. Obviously, hockey night in Canada, it'll be watched by a bunch of people here, but nothing really special in the United States. How many people to the person? Is it going to be everybody in the country, must-see TV, don't go to the bars, don't go to the restaurants for anything other than to watch? How big an event is that, guys?
Oh, every bar will be packed. People watching. I mean, I can't predict what the numbers will be, but they'll be astronomical in Canada, watching the whole tournament, Four Nations Cup,
If they're
but
in the
especially
finals,
U.S. and Canada.
well, if U.S. and Canada are in the finals, and you walk in downtown Toronto or downtown Montreal, will you see a human being? Is everybody going to be following that?
Everybody will be following it.
Yeah, I think so. It's going to be great for the sport, and hopefully it attracts a little attention here. I think obviously with us having a couple guys on Canada, I think that'll hopefully help. The fans around here wanting to have a look at that and see those guys stack up against some of the best players in Canada and the U.S. So
All right,
And
Nick,
it's great, those two guys, Sanheim and Konecny.
the
man,
Travi.
The Travi, as a defenseman, I'm so happy for Sanheim because he wasn't on anybody's radar really. Like, we knew how good he was, and he had a breakout year last year. And to me, once again, as a fan and an old guy watching, he didn't rest on his laurels. He came back and better prepared, and he's dominated this year, and he earned his spot onto that team.
yeah, I agree. I think it shows how long the position for a defenseman takes a little bit longer to develop and fill into that role. But I give Travis a lot of credit. I think the biggest thing that he was lacking is the one 2 summers ago, before his really kind of broke out. He went home and his off-season training changed. He put on some weight and he really came in a lot better shape. And I think his game's just gone to the next level. You can see the amount of minutes he can play out there. He's killing penalties. He's getting a few looks on the power play, and he's huge for the Flyers 5-on-5. So it's nice to see those guys get rewarded. And Konecny, with how important he is for the Flyers and the way he's playing right now, it's nice to see those guys on that Canadian roster.
Here's something you're rarely going to hear. So I don't remember this. I have no idea if I'm Ristolainen, who scored the winning goal last night.
Wasn't that funny? Like, it sat on the goal line, on the goal line. They gave it to Tippett, and they even named him the player of the game, like on the TV, the player of the game. And like halfway, wait a minute, you didn't score the goal.
But he's like the Finnish Sanheim. Nothing was expected of him. He's made a huge move, a big right-handed defenseman. 2 questions, guys. A, do you think at the trade deadline he and Scott Lawton are going to be the Flyers' biggest chips? And B, and I have no idea, is he playing for Finland, Nick?
He is on Team Finland, yeah.
Okay.
He's going to be playing for Finland, which is good for him and much deserving the way he's played. And to your point, I think when he was drafted, he was a high pick, and I think when he came in Buffalo too, there was lots of promise there, and just played on a lot of bad teams. And it's nice to see the Flyers kind of turning the corner here, and you kind of get put in a tough spot then. It's nice to see him. I know he mentioned having a consistent coach for a while now and just kind of learning from Brad Shaw and being under him as a D coach, and I think his game's come a long way, and he's a big piece to the Flyers right now, him and Scotty Lawton. I think the price those guys are at right now, with Lott's at $3 million, I think Risto's at $5 million, with the cap going up, they're at good numbers and those are veteran guys that are tough to replace. You better have someone coming up in the pipeline if you're going to move those guys. I think we're at a good spot with our prospects, our draft picks we have coming up, so I think Danny is well aware of that, and that's why, to his point, he's not shopping those guys. He'll obviously listen to anything that's out there because he's looking to build and make the Flyers a consistent contender every year.
The thing is, as sports fans in whatever sport, they don't realize how devastating or how detrimental it is to a young kid. In hockey's case, they're 18 when they get drafted. You get drafted to a bad organization, a.k.a. Buffalo.
You were.
Who was in what?
You were.
What?
When you were 20, you were drafted to a bad organization.
No, Atlanta Flames. We were top 6 team in the league.
I thought they were terrible the first
No.
year.
Well, in 1972 they were. It was
Oh, all right.
1978. Anyhow, Buffalo Sabres, like, they're still spinning their wheels, and they're spinning their wheels. Like, they hired their head coach was a soccer guy from Germany, for heaven's sakes. And so as a young kid, what are you gonna learn? How are you gonna develop in that environment? And so, like, you nailed it. He come here and says, hey, I've got a real coach for more than a year, and so that's why he's developing. He had injuries, and so how old is he? I forget how old he is. So
31?
Yeah, he's close to 30, I believe,
you know,
now.
so
but
he spent a lot of years floundering
Yeah.
in the National Hockey League, and so it's great to see because he's dominant out there.
Yeah, and that's why I think to your point with some of our young guys now, and I know Danny's kind of talked about the rebuild and stuff, but the season we had last year being in the mix right till the end, and now too, I know you want to get high draft picks and some better players, but what our kids are going through right now that are on the Flyers, I believe we're the 4th or 5th youngest team. This is big time development for them playing in these games, playing in meaningful games, and pushing for a playoff spot.
Yeah, and you go back to when Claude Giroux was here, and I never sat in the dressing room with Claude, but he's a great Flyer and a great player for a long time. But when they moved him, we got Tippett in a draft pick for him, but it allowed our younger players, and you know this because you're around them, our younger players all of a sudden to step ahead and be a leader and not worry about the old leadership like the Voraceks and the Claude Giroux. And I'm not saying that no disrespect to those two guys, but sometimes it's time to make the change and let the youngsters step forward and be the leaders. And that's what we're experiencing now.
You guys both said, I think, Nick, you mentioned specifically, and Brad, you've talked about this before, how it may take a defenseman a little bit longer in the NHL. Obviously, the Flyers need centers.
Forwards are just dumb defensemen. They can't play. They would just move them up to the wing.
Put them on wing, exactly.
Yeah, easiest job in the world, defensive forward.
Yeah. Sam Ersson at goal, but why? I mean, obviously, you have to skate backwards. You have to cover people, and you got to coordinate with your defensive partner. But is there any inherent reason why it takes longer for a defenseman other than that to develop?
I just think there's only 6 on a team compared to, in the lineup playing 12 forwards. So obviously, if something's not going great for a forward, it's easy. You can park them, you can sit them, you can play them sparingly. But I think for D, if you lose one guy you see in games, it's tough if you're down to 5 or a guy takes a penalty. So I think you're just more on an island there. And to your point, you're kind of the last line of defense there. So sometimes it takes a little bit longer for those guys to figure out the defending side of it and how to play the position properly and just the jump, I think, from every level, the speed of the game and the players get bigger and stronger coming into the American League to the NHL. So sometimes it just takes those guys a little bit longer to adapt to that.
Brad, what do you think your prime was in the NHL? You came in as a 20-year-old. You both played forever. What do you think were your prime years?
I think the 2 years, like my draft year was 20 years old, and then they changed it to 18 because a few of the good players were challenging the draft rules. The 2 years makes a huge difference. When the Atlanta Flames drafted me, like basically there was no guarantee that I was going to make it, but they were basically drafting a young man, whereas when you're drafting an 18-year-old, in some cases they just turned 18, so they're really more of a 17-year-old. So much can happen in those development, and you're working with them now, and you must look in the mirror, man, I'm really old when you go see some of the young 18-year-old draft picks, because they are babies, for heaven's sakes. I remember at one of the charity events, the casino night, we were there, and I know you were there. I bumped into Bobby Brink, and I had met him earlier. My wife was with me, and she's going, was that really an NHL player? He still looks like he's 10 years. He's like Danny Briere. Still looks like he's a kid.
Though.
Yeah,
he's not that young.
But he looks just like a young kid. And the thing is, back to your question, is the 2 years makes a big difference. And so the maturity process is different for the draft picks now than it was when I played.
That was my problem. I hit my prime when I was 8, and by the time I was 12, it was kind of over for me. And the NHL drafted at 18, so c'est la vie.
And I was fortunate, too. I was drafted by the Atlanta Flames, which was, as I said, corrected you on. It was a very good team at the time, but they needed defensemen. So I was able to step in and play. We were watching the Montreal Canadiens earlier on the TV here. In 1978, if I'm drafted by the Montreal Canadiens, Serge Savard, Larry Robinson, Guy Lapointe, they basically played 3 defensemen you're never even heard of again. Sure. You might get lost in their minors and never get the tap on the shoulder to come up. So you got to be a little bit lucky too with who picks you.
Speaking of luck, there was a game in the NHL last night between Edmonton and the Caps that a lot of people say was settled by a plate of nachos. Did you guys see this?
I did not see that. I missed it.
Somebody threw some nachos on the ice, like a cup, and it landed like as is. There were nachos in it, and the goaltender for Washington was distracted, and I can't remember who scored the goal, but they scored, and the coach went crazy, and the players went crazy. Did you see this, Brad?
No.
And the coach was saying, am I allowed to challenge this or not? Nobody had any idea. Just a funny moment. Just thought I'd throw it in there. Nick, when Danny Briere is making deals and this, that, the other, you a part of that process at all? Not do you make the deals? Obviously, he's the GM, he and Jonesy, whatever. But when they're calling around, like every general manager is asking about everybody, are you part of that process?
No, we're not. We don't. We kind of deal, like I said, with our prospects. So if there's obviously, we're out watching our prospects, and we give reports on them. We meet with Danny and Jonesy and Brent Flair, Alan McCauley before Christmas, and then at the end of the year here, we go over our guys. Where they're at. So, I mean, obviously, if there was maybe a trade in place for one of our prospects, they could reach out and, you know what I mean, and want to get an idea of where they're at and see if they were interested in moving somebody or acquiring somebody. But for the most part, we just kind of deal with our guys and how they're developing.
All right, real
So
quick.
is it
Go
break
ahead.
time again?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? How time flies. Brad will have to remember another question. That's 2 in one night. That's a new NHL record. Take another quick break. Come on up and see Brad, see Nick. We're here at Chickies and Pete's in Marlton. There's 9,000 TVs, great atmosphere, a lot of hockey on, a lot of sports on. We're back right after this. Stay with us.
Hi, it's Pete from Chickie and Pete's. Wrap up your workday with the all-new Chickies and Pete's Happy Hour with unbeatable specials weekdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Enjoy half-price orders of Chickies medium tender wings, one of our tasty and delicious pizzas, or an order of mouth-watering hot, cold, or fried shrimp. Plus $3 domestic bottled beers, $5 Tito's, and $6 seltzers. It's the all-new Happy Hour, weekdays 4 to 6 p.m., only at Chickies and Pete's.
Payroll Service Solutions was established in 2001 to cater to the payroll needs of small to medium-sized businesses. Payroll Service Solutions offers unparalleled customer service while they deliver a complete and accurate payroll. When calling Payroll Service Solutions, you will never be put into a voicemail or go through a series of prompts to get to a person. All customer service representatives are extensively trained to handle all of your payroll needs, therefore saving you time. They value each and every one of their clients. No account is too small. Call Payroll Service Solutions today at 1-866-PAY-EASY for a no-obligation review of your payroll needs. That number again is 1-866-PAYEASY. Payroll Service Solutions.
At Independence Blue Cross, we take care of the people who take care of you. Everyday heroes like firefighters, police officers, teachers, farmers, and healthcare workers. Doctors and hospitals across the region have IBX, and they know what it means to have reliable access to care. So whether you're saving lives or just trying to live a healthier life, count on IBX, the region's #1 health insurer for 85 years. Learn more at IBX.com.
We now return to Chickies and Pete's for On the Ice, presented by Independence Blue Cross. Once again, here are your hosts, Paul Jolovitz and former Flyer Brad Marsh.
Alrighty, it's time now for the Smart Stat of the Week, brought to you by Payroll Service Solutions. Call them today at 1-866-PAY-EASY. That's 1-866-PAY-EASY. Easy one tonight. Flyers last night's win in Detroit. Have points in 6 straight games. Keep it up, boys. At Madison Square Garden tomorrow night. That was your Flyers Smart Stat of the Week, brought to you again by Payroll Service Solutions. Call them today at 1-866-PAY-EASY for the smart choice in payroll services. Payroll Service Solutions, catering to the small and medium-sized businesses for all your payroll needs. Call them again today at 1-866-PAY-EASY. 1-866-MEMORY-EASY describes Mr. Morris. Have you remembered question number 2?
Yeah, I already asked it off the air, so I got my answer. I'll keep
Cool.
the audience in suspense. No, it was in relation to all the young players that Nick sees. And how long have you been doing this now?
This is year 6.
Year
Doing
6.
well, yeah.
And I was just asking, do you ever sit down with a young fella and say, ooh, man alive, this is going to be a project here. But because not every player lives up to the billing of the draft pick. And so when you sit down and talk to him, because I played junior with Rob Ramage, he does similar work with the Canadians. And so I often ask him that, like, sometimes you just must scratch your head.
Yeah, I think to your point, being a 20-year-old draft, I think the NHL had a perfect opportunity the year of COVID where a lot of those leagues didn't play. They could have changed to a 19-year-old draft. And I think that would have been a little bit better. I think you see every year there's a couple 18-year-olds play. Obviously, the top kids, which to your point was probably why it switched from a 20-year-old to 18-year-old to get those guys playing, the Celebranis, Bernard, these guys that can play. But every year there's a couple 18-year-olds that play. For the most part, kids aren't sniffing until they're 19, 20. So it makes sense. And it would be a lot easier on organizations now, scouting-wise and stuff, to have that extra year of kids playing and dealing with them. I think a lot of it will change now with the NCAA rules changing and the landscape of hockey with junior hockey and all that stuff, and the amount of time you have the rights for a player. So I think a lot of that will change. But to your point, there is some guys that at that age they got a lot to learn, and that's kind of why we're in this role, to help these guys. And
the thing is, they
steer them
don't
in the
think
right
they
direction.
have a lot to learn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so, but for the most part, I think we have a good staff, lots of guys with experience that these kids, hopefully they're looking up to us and our experiences, and we're there to help these guys and be there. And ultimately our goal, for our job is to get them to pro hockey and to get them to be a Flyer one day.
All right, you kind of put that on the tape, Nick, with your pass. My next question to you played 17 years, last 3 with the Flyers, played a lot of time with the Wild, played with some other teams, working for the Flyers now, living here primarily. A lot of Philly athletes live here after they retire. Brad's one of them, came back from Ottawa. Why you?
It's a good question. The opportunity when I signed here, when Hexie was the GM, honestly, my wife, we had never being from out in Western Canada, she was like so nervous to come out east. We had never been the furthest
nervous
east.
About what?
We had never, so far away from family.
Oh, okay.
All of our families out Western Canada. To Minnesota was kind of perfect. We were kind of Midwest, but all the way out east, being that far away from family. And we moved out here, and our kids have gone through school here right from elementary into high school now, and just love the community, love being a part of it here, and really fell in love with the East Coast and the area where we are in New Jersey, and the schools and everything for our family and stuff. It's just a great place to live. And to your point, I got Scotty Hartnell and Chemo teaming in a couple blocks from me. You got guys, that stick around here in the area. Lots of the Phillies living in the area. All these guys. That it's a great place to live. It's a great sports town, and it's fun to to get an opportunity to live here and raise your family here.
Brad, I'm going to tell you right now, this is the absolute truth. I'm not lying. Last night I broke a tooth watching a hockey game. Watching a hockey game, chewing on a wing, felt my tooth. I've never broken a tooth in my life. It came out. I have a sharp bit there. I kept watching. I didn't stop. I'm a hockey player. How many teeth did you lose during your NHL career?
None during my career.
None?
No, I lost some off the ice in different mishaps, but never while
what
I was
mishaps?
playing. I was changing my tire one time on my van down in Atlanta, and the jack sprung up, hit me in the mouth.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Played your whole career and you got killed by a jack?
Yeah, that hurt, man.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Nick, you lose any teeth in your career?
I got 3. Yeah, 3 that went off. Blocking a shot off my stick hit me up in the.
You stay in the game?
Chiclet, so. I did actually, yeah. So
right,
happened early on.
You stayed in the game, Nick stayed in the game.
Yeah, I kept watching. Well, Brad, we talked about this, about Joel Embiid missing a few games for a few different reasons. When you, Nick, look at basketball players, football players who miss games for what you think, first of all, load management, taking nights off. You missed like 27 games with a broken hangnail. Does that bother you? Do you wonder, like, if these guys were hockey players in the dressing room, what would happen if somebody missed 10 games with something you couldn't believe? Is that policed by the players? I mean, if you can't play, you can't play. But what's your opinion of other sports and guys who might be a little softer?
I think it's definitely gone too far, the load management stuff. I think that's, to your point, talking about the best players playing the game and the 76ers coming into people want to see Joel Embiid play. It's tough as an athlete. I never want to question another athlete if they're not able to play. I'm not a huge into basketball, but from watching right now, I think the biggest problem is just the amount of foul. I feel like they don't defend it as hard as they used to because the calls on the fouls. So I think the competitiveness of the game has dropped off just because you don't see guys defending as hard, and I think you want to see that where they, that battle, that competing. And like I said, I didn't play the sport. I watch it a little bit. Love watching the playoffs if the Sixers are in it, but it's not something I follow that closely. But that's something when I'm watching, and it just seems like everyone's shooting threes. There's not as much, the defending on it and playing hard and competing.
Women's basketball, that's where it's at.
It is. Women's basketball is good.
Yeah.
That was spoken as a true defenseman. John Tortorella with the Flyers has lines in threes and usually changes them 17 times a game, but there's a couple lines, Tyson Forster, Noah Cates, Bobby Brink won, Joel Farabee, Sean Couturier, Matvei Michkov played pretty well. It seems like Brad and Nick, some lines are developing, some continuity is developing. Obviously the defensemen, we know about their pairings, but how important is it to have continuity in lines and guys who know each other? Noah Cates seems to have ESP with Bobby Brink.
Well, personally, I think it's very important, and it was a staple back when I played. The lines basically stayed together, Poulin, Prop, and Kerr, type of thing. And but I don't know when it changed in the National Hockey League, where it's just not John Tortorella. It's every coach. They just keep juggling the lines, looking for that magic 1-2 or the combination or the connection or whatever it is. And I don't know when it started being like that, but you almost just take it for granted now. And even as a fan, they're sitting watching it. Oh, they didn't click or they didn't score. Oh, change the lines. Like the fans are now expecting it. But anyhow, I like to see the chemistry out there, and so I'm excited that those lines are together. But who knows, if they get off to a bad start tomorrow, that they might be changed in the first period. Who knows?
Never know. Torts is a guy that's a little bit different. His sits guys, he's beats to his own drummer, Nick. I mean, you work with the Flyers, you see John Tortorella, but he wins. And he's won a Stanley Cup. As long as you win, doesn't matter what you do. I've heard executives say, I don't care if my guy rolls a bowling ball out there to set his lineups if you win. If somebody said to you, I love hockey, you got a strange coach in Philadelphia, a little bit different than others. How different would you say Torts is? And as Brad says, how much does he fit in with everybody else? Because everybody does what he does. How would you describe Torts?
I think the big thing and why he was brought in, the culture and the accountability in the game has changed now, and I think Torts really doesn't care, right? He's going to do what he wants to do. To your point, if he wants to sit a guy, if it's his captain, if it's whoever, he's going to do it to show. Yeah, all these guys that have gone through, and I think to your point, he's had success and he's been around for a long time. And I know I had who they're showing on TV, Jacques Lemaire as a young coach for myself, and I went through a lot of those growing pains as a young player and got sat, got benched, and I think sometimes you have to have that tough love, and I think Torts has that a little bit, but the players respect him. They want to play hard for him, and you can see the kind of the group coming together. So I think hopefully these young guys, and you hear Risto talking about it. We talked about him and the different coaches he's had and settling in. Different guys respond to different coaching, but I think Torts knows what works for him and how he's going to coach, and that's kind of how he's been. He's had success doing it, and like you said, he's coached for a long time, won a lot of games, won a Stanley Cup, so he's kind of keeps with what works.
Brad, do you think if when Mike Keenan coached you, obviously you played basically 4D, 2 rotations, Howe and McCrimmon and you and Doug Crossman, obviously you had 6 defensemen. Do you think Tortorella would play the same way as Keenan back in the day? How's he different? How's he alike? What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I've never sat in the dressing room with Torts. Obviously, I've met him and talked to him and know of him, but I don't think there's any comparison with the two. It's 2 different eras type of thing, and Mike motivated a certain way, and I think if you talk to any player with Torts, they know exactly where they stand, and if they are tapped on the shoulder to sit in the press box, they know exactly what they're going to be doing while they're in the press box. I think there's more communication with John, whereas with Mike, he was he played the head games, and I got really no patience for the head game type of thing, and there's a number of coaches that do play those head games, and in this day and age, there's really no room for that in professional sports.
Fans sometimes, I take questions on WIP about every sport. Nick Sirianni is a player's coach and a lot of opinions. Nick, you played for a lot of coaches. Brad, you played for a lot of coaches. I think there's an image among a lot of people that players, coaches, coddle players, aren't tough on them, don't get them to their max, might be nice guys, might love them in press conferences. What kind of coach do you like playing for the most, Nick, that got the most out of you, either somebody by name or just a type of coach?
I think to what Brad just mentioned there, I think people now, they want to know what's going on. They want to have that, they don't want to have the head games. They want to have guys be straightforward with them, know kind of where they stand. And Jacques Lemaire was my first coach as a young player coming in, had him for a long time, somebody that had won, and I learned a lot from him. So he was probably the best coach for me. But to that point, you kind of knew where you stood. But also those guys, you got to want to play for your coach and play hard for him. So you got to have that respect factor there. And you can be a player's coach and be buddy with them. But I think guys understand when it's time to buckle down and work, or it's in practice, it's in games. They want to play for that coach and respect them. So I think those guys get the most results out of their players. They got to want to go out and play hard for the guy behind the bench.
All right, guys, we got the deal deadline coming up March 7th, less than 2 months away. Flyers are on that kind of Walenda line where you're not sure if you're going to buy, you're not sure if you're going to sell. But let's assume for this that you guys are buyers. You need a centerman, obviously, to play with Mitchkoff and the like. What else do you need, Brad? What do you think? Both of you, if you get you first.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, it was goaltending.
Yep.
But it looks like for
Things
now
changed.
that things have changed and they look solid. But I think every team is in the same boat for the most part. You can always use a nice big defenseman out there that can move the puck, et cetera, and you can't overestimate the size. If you look at the 16 teams that do make the playoffs, then it goes to 8-4-2. Obviously, those rosters are filled with big guys that can play, and so we still need some pieces, but I really think the number one piece we need is finding that person that can play with our young guy. Mitchkoff, yes. And I know that's easier said than done, but, you can go over and there's been a lot of stars in the game that they never found. Matt Sundin, that's going back a long way, but all Toronto ever talked about was finding someone to play with Matt Sundin, and they never did, for heaven's sakes.
Toronto hasn't won a Stanley Cup
So I think that's really important, is to find that guy that can play with Mitchkoff, and the other pieces will fall into place.
All right, we'll ask Nick the same question, get to more Flyer stuff. Again, the Rangers tomorrow. The Rangers have had an interesting year. They started like a house of fire. Now they're like a house on fire. Teams changed. Sam Ersson stepped up. Flyers have stepped up. Let's hope it continues. Back from Chickens and Pizza Marlton with On the Ice, presented by Independence Blue Cross. Final segment follows this.
Hi, it's Pete from Chicky and Pete's, and we are prouder than ever to partner with the Philadelphia Eagles. Chicky and Pete's has been named the official sports bar of the Philadelphia Eagles, and we continue to serve as the official caterer of both Eagles training camp and the official caterer of the First Trust Bank Club at Lincoln Financial Field. Go where the players go. The official sports bar of the Philadelphia Eagles, Chickies and Pete's.
Children's mental health is in crisis. That's why the Kids Mental Health Foundation envisions a future where mental health is a vital part of growing up. Parents tell us the challenges are real.
So you know what to do if they have a fever. But when you see them struggling emotionally, and you're like, what do I do?
You're gonna find tons of things on the internet, but you want it to be from a trusted source.
The Kids Mental Health Foundation provides free, expert-developed resources to millions across the United States. Don't wait for a concern or crisis. Learn more at kidsmentalhealthfoundation.org.
Payroll Service Solutions was established in 2001 to cater to the payroll needs of small to medium-sized businesses. Payroll Service Solutions offers unparalleled customer service while they deliver a complete and accurate payroll. When calling Payroll Service Solutions, you will never be put into a voicemail or go through a series of prompts to get to a person. All customer service representatives are extensively trained to handle all of your payroll needs, therefore saving you time. They value each and every one of their clients. No account is too small. Call Payroll Service Solutions today at 1-866-PAY-EASY for a no-obligation review of your payroll needs. That number again is 1-866-PAYEASY. Payroll Service Solutions.
At Independence Blue Cross, we take care of the people who take care of you. Everyday heroes like firefighters, police officers, teachers, farmers, and healthcare workers. Doctors and hospitals across the region have IBX, and they know what it means to have reliable access to care. So whether you're saving lives or just trying to live a healthier life, count on IBX, the region's #1 health insurer for 85 years. Learn more at IBX.com.
We now return to Chickies and Pete's for On the Ice, presented by Independence Blue Cross. Once again, here are your hosts, Paul Jolovitz and former Flyer Brad Marsh.
All righty, back at Chickies and Pete's final segment. Nick, Brad and I are on the same side of the equation in this one. I'm sure you have an opinion, too, about Alex Ovechkin, who's going to break Wayne Gretzky's record, barring some kind of disaster. I don't want him to break it. I love Gretzky. I think Ovechkin's kind of a selfish player. I don't want to speak for Brad, but I think he thinks basically the same thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to happen. It's definitely going to happen for sure. It's pretty impressive with the goaltending now. I think, and he's definitely a goal scorer, a pure shooter, and he plays hard. It's to his credit, he figured it out how to play defense and put it into effect for them to win a Stanley Cup. So I think that kind of puts him at a different level if he was to get the goal record without it. But I think he's somebody that, if you watch him play now, I don't think he's got quite the same juice that he had before, but he still seems to be scoring. And obviously Washington's put himself in a good spot in the standings right now as well.
All right, obviously you said during the break you got a 17-year-old. We wish him the best up at Avon Old Farms in Connecticut. Hopefully he'll turn into Alex Ovechkin or Wayne Gretzky. Somebody does. Obviously those guys are those guys. Who's the best player you ever played with in your 17 years?
Best player I played with?
Yep.
I had Marian Gaborik early on when I was with Minnesota. He was probably, one of the, top guys. I played Mikko Koivu in Minnesota as well. Those guys coming here, Claude Giroux, I really enjoyed playing with him in Philly. I thought he was a great leader, and some of the way he could play and put up points and how competitive he was another guy. Probably those three guys were some of the top guys. So,
Brad, did you have any idea? I kind of did, to be honest with you. Maybe a lucky guess, but we've had him on the show a couple times. One of the nicest guys ever, Alex Lyon, who didn't succeed here, was kind of a 4A player, bounced between the minors and the Flyers, now playing for Detroit. I mean, obviously rooting against him last night, but rooting for him many times and, of course, in life. Who's a guy that you play with that couldn't quite find a home and did find one somewhere else? Life is about situations and fit. Can you think of anybody else like Alex Lyon, either one of you guys?
Well, I'd have to really think about that one, but with Alex, and goaltending is a little different than the other positions, as we've said many times, and sometimes you just mesh with the D that are in front of you, and things click, or your first start, you make the big save, and everything kind of goes your way, or the opposite happens, and you're always fighting the puck. And great for Alex. And we've had a couple goaltenders that have been here for a cup of coffee, and have gone on to bigger and better things. And and obviously you can say Bob Brodsky, but Stolarz in Toronto, holy moly, sure. Like the last number of years he's been like the top backup, and now he's
Bobrovsky's backup for a while.
Yeah, and he put up some solid numbers. And there's another goalie he played. Is he in Carolina now? Anyhow, but good on Alex Lyon, good on Stolarz for sticking with it, and now they're getting quality ice time, and they're leading the teams that they're playing for respectively. So, all right, Nick,
you work in player development. You ever have a guy that flamed out here? Brad was talking earlier about draft picks that just seem like big misses, and then they find somewhere else, and something clicks. Does that ever happen with you?
It hasn't happened here yet. We're pretty cautious with the guys we have to make sure before they get, if they were to move on from them, that, we're making sure that there's not something there, and we've given them that opportunity. I think there has been a couple instances where we've had some guys come from junior and the roles they have in junior, and we try to, mold them into a different player here. Not everyone, they're all top-line guys in junior. When they get to the American League and get to the pro level, you have to, kind of find your role. So trying to find those guys the right spot for them to give them the best opportunity to become a player. So definitely there, we're kind of learned some lessons where we've put guys and how we've seen them fit. So some guys haven't evolved to what we thought, and they've went other places, and it hasn't worked out for them. But definitely it is you need to get that opportunity. And to your point, some guys this year, I watched Helge Grans come up for the Flyers this year and played, exceptionally well up here, and he was a complete shock for a lot of us. I think his game has progressed down there, but some of those guys come to the NHL level and can look, a lot better as well.
A great example is Tippett that we got for Claude. Sure. Like he couldn't. Granted, Florida was a pretty good lineup, but he never found his role, his niche, coming from junior. in the Florida lineup. He comes here and he certainly looks like he's ready to break out. He scored some nice goals for us and does some great things out there. But
some defensemen too. Our little 22-year-old Swedish defenseman.
Yeah, Emil, Andre. Yeah, same with him. I mean, he got an opportunity to play some pro in Europe and coming over here last year as a rookie too. And when he got called up, I think he showed a lot of people that he can play at that level. I think to Brad's point, they were a little bit concerned with having too many small guys on the back end. I think that's the only thing that was maybe playing against him, but he proved that he could play, and he's a guy that's very competitive, and regardless of his size, he can compete and defend against those guys and provide some good offense.
Of course, the big watch is on how Cutter Gauthier is going to play, as a young draft pick here.
Yeah,
we
for sure.
got rid of him.
Team had a little problem the other week here, huh?
Yeah, and so you never want to really wish anybody, anything bad, but I sure hope he flops.
To your point, I think someone mentioned, I don't know, it was with that win or after, I think the Flyers are 5-0-1 since center, including that game. And I think the fans that came out and the atmosphere in the building that night.
Were you there that night?
I was not. I was watching the Phantoms. Fortunately, I wasn't at the game, but Johnny Leclerc was there. He was sending myself and Patrick Sharp messages like the building is like, it's insane.
Electric.
It's crazy. It's back how it was back, and I think that probably really fueled the team, right? The atmosphere that can be in there. And Torch mentioned it, like having that atmosphere and wanting the guys to experience that in a playoff game. So hopefully that's helping motivate them and push for a playoff spot.
All right, the future is always what people are interested in. If you're not going to win a Stanley Cup, obviously the Flyers could this year, probably won't, to be blunt about it. But 1 million draft picks, you can get more in trades. Danny's got to decide: do we buy? Do we sell? Kind of on that fine line where you can make a mistake. Or you guys got a ton of prospects, you got a ton of draft picks, ton of guys in the minors. Obviously the future is important, Nick. That goes without saying. But there are a couple guys that you see down there or that haven't been drafted yet. You don't have to name them, that you have an eye on, that you say, well, if we get this guy to put here, kind of put the jigsaw puzzle together in your mind. I assume everybody that does what you do is doing that, right?
Yeah, I think to your point right now, this draft is big for the organization, having 6 picks in the first 2 rounds. Those are going to be some good players we're going to be drafting, and to see the amount of work our scouts are putting in. They're out watching games every night all across the world and from Europe over to Canada, U.S. here. So those guys are putting in the work, trying to find those guys for us to help and develop. But we definitely have some guys pushing in the minors and then down in college and Canadian juniors. So I think we're in a good spot there. And to your point, there's obviously to have a center there, someone that can play with Michkov would be nice. And obviously Danny with his press conference yesterday talked about a lot of that stuff. And to your point, I think with Lawton and Risto, those guys not being around, we have a year left with them, so that can build there. And they're 2 big pieces to the puzzle here. Those guys in the locker room and what they provide. It's tough to find those guys out there, and there's no real need to give them away for nothing unless you're getting a big piece in return.
How's Lutsenko playing? Have you been to see him?
Yeah, Luch has been
recently?
doing well.
Yeah.
His team is okay where he's playing.
Yeah.
He's not on
captain.
He was, yeah. So he's not on a
Will he
on
be
a great
traded,
team.
do you think?
The deadline is passed. He's still there.
Okay,
I think
good.
they're probably hoping he'll be back
I
next
thought the
year,
Knights
which
would
is a possibility.
I thought the Knights would make a deal
I think
for him.
they were
seem
looking
to get
for him.
everybody.
They traded for Allen, a defenseman from their team. So, but he's playing well. He's playing lots of minutes. He's he's doing the right things. He's a good player. He's a big prospect for us. So he, to your point, kind of falls in that spot where he's someone that can hopefully maybe fit in that role.
In Danny's presser yesterday, he was pretty blunt about it. He didn't like the way he was used in the Canadian in the World Juniors. I like the way Danny speaks out about this kind of stuff. I mean, obviously, he's not general manager of that team, but I like he thinks about stuff before he makes a move. He knows what he wants. He's blunt at times. I think he's going to be very good. I think he is very good. What do you think? Obviously, you're not going to say he's not, but tell us what you think about Danny.
Yeah, I think he's doing a great job, and I think to your point there with Luch, it wasn't he's looking out for his players. We got our players back, and we want to see the best for them, and I think Luch and Bonk, for his points yesterday, played well in the tournament, but the way that they were used, we would have liked to seen it a little bit different. and thought they could have helped Canada. Obviously, Canada didn't have a great tournament. And thought those guys, could have been utilized a lot different. Could have, helped the team out.
All right, Marcy. Next week we're going to switch over to the offensive side, and Paul Holmgren is going to join us from Parks. Thanks for being with us today. A little bit of a last-second line change for Nick at 7 o'clock. Everything worked out well. Thanks for doing the show.
Not a problem. It was fun. Went by real quick.
Because our guest, Nick Schultz, who was terrific and is terrific, best of luck in your endeavors, Nick. And you want to be a head coach in the NHL someday?
If I want to get fired, I guess, in a couple of years.
People get hired to get fired.
Yeah,
Thanks for being with us.
right.
All right, Nick, what's his name? Chris Irmer. My mind's not working. Produced this fine program. Stephen Lawler back at the station. For Nick Schultz, for Brad Marsh, I'm Paul Jolovitz, the Independence Blue Cross on the ice. Join us at Parks next week with Paul Holmgren. We're back here in 2 weeks in Marlton with Mark Howe. Have a great week, everybody. Go Flyers!
You're listening to 1490 WBCB and on your FM dial at 107.3 W297CL Levittown.